guys. So I've gone through my document. This is to sort of carry on from where we were. I've built my um, master pages. I showed you in the last video. So you can sort of see now I've attached all of my master pages. So that's super handy because then you're guaranteed that your text is the same width, sitting in the same columns in the same place. As you flip your pages around, your folios at the top will update. The more pages you add, they will update. So outside of that, the sort of next change I made, so we started with an 8-page document, determined that there was going to be a cover, an outside back cover. So relatively, it's going to be a self-cover book, meaning that the next page you see is going to be the inside front cover. So what I've done is I pulled some of the text out of the story to create an introduction on the left-hand side and kind of a giant pull quote that introduces the actual story. So you can't really see it here because it's kind of in a white color. But then over here, what I've done is I've reset the text. So the next paragraph after that, I made bold so it works as an intro. I've created pull quotes throughout, so you can sort of see, if I zoom in, I've done this manually using text wrap. So here you can sort of see I've got 3.125 and 0.25 on the bottom. When you're working with text wraps, I tend to initially sort of move them around myself like this. So you can automate them, but you'll see the space above and the space below, they adjust the text. So as I move up, as soon as it hits that text wrap, it moves a line down. So what you're after when you're putting in pull quotes, you want a pull quote to sit within text, meaning look at how strange this looks, having a full paragraph, then having one line, and then the pull quote, then the text. So what we're really after is minimum 2 lines for something like that. Better yet, 3 lines would be good, and then you're sort of visually centering that the quote in there. Of course, every time you do that, it's going to affect what happens on the bottom of the page. As well, I've added a continued over, so CON apostrophe T over in brackets, like in 6-point or 7-point type, and an arrow. I will be adjusting this layout so I don't end up with one line of type on the bottom of the page as well. So all of these things take a little bit of finessing. Then as we go through, there's still some finessing to do over here. Up here, we would never really have half a line of text. It's literally like having, it is like having a widow up there. So we'll adjust all of those. You see another pull quote. I think Anna was asking me if there was ever a time where text could break out, and so I've included that. You just don't want to get into the gutter. You want to have at least 2 words here. So I've gone in and I've pulled important parts of the story out. You try and keep them, relatively, this is about as long as you want to go with a pull quote. You do add a quote to the beginning of it and the end of it. If it's not the beginning of, if it's right in the middle of a paragraph that you pull out, then what you would do right before, say, if then was in the middle of a paragraph, you would go ... and that would introduce your pull quote, just to let the readers know that this is the middle of a thought. So we have built that in there. I've adjusted some spacing so that relatively, and I'll fix this again, continued over. Once you're done setting your type, you will paste continued over right into a line of text. Right now I've just got it sitting in a box. Um, right. So we'll have to make some adjustments on, on some of our pull quotes to sort of get them to sit in there a little bit nicer. Let's see, so we go down to the bottom, and so you can sort of see the end of my story ends here. I've pasted in a little red box to indicate to the viewers that that's the end of the story. So the next thing I'm going to do is just talk about a story like this. I've asked you for an illustration, but the reality is this is not a fictional story. This is a nonfiction story. However, reading the story, there's not a lot of visual cues outside of sort of big pharma companies trying to find cures, and so there's a lot of lab shots and things like that. The original story had a shot of Donald Trump, and it had a stock shot of some pills. So I've just comped up a quick illustration. So I'm going to just sort of show you how I would approach something like this. So we got 4 pages to deal with, or 3, sorry, back cover, front cover, inside front cover. Because this is a self cover, there's no way I would really want to start a huge page of text over here, which is why I've sort of brought in a couple oversized pull quotes. I'm trying to be a little bit a combination of sort of tight design, but also a little bit funky in parts. With a story like this, if you're using illustration, you pretty much also have to combine it with photography, because it's not a nonfiction story. It begs to have some sort of shots in there to be grounded in reality. So I've attempted to do that. So I'll just sort of show you I'll drop the illustration in. So it really is just a play on the illustration they did. It's kind of a whole, I thought of it as a a sheep in wolf's clothing. So you sort of have a wolf holding a pill over somebody's head. So I'm primarily going to be figuring out how to do this with very minimal color. So I've gone with quite an oversized headline, but I've dropped it to the bottom of the page, which is okay. On the back cover, I think I've mentioned to you before, it typically is not as busy as the front cover. If the organization has addresses or anything like that, or websites, you would put that in. So on this side, I just have sort of a little spot illustration of the wolf, and just have repeated the title of it. So then when we get to the next part, I look at this first page as an opportunity to do something a little bit more dramatic. So we are going to have a lot of pages of sort of long white pages broken up with some pull quotes and things like that. But to get the pacing a little bit more interesting, what I'm doing on this first page is I'm sort of blowing up the illustration and just adding a couple elements to it, so it's kind of zoomed in on the wolf, and he's kind of slathering, and I've literally looked at the beginning of the story, and I've introduced it here in a very kind of understated way, but then when it gets to this part where the guy says, what price might we set for the medicine, that kind of just reminded me of, like, some CEO sitting there slathering over the opportunity to charge 4 times the amount of money that it's typically takes to make it. So I've made that sort of the introduction inside front cover, and then the second introduction would be to the story here, and then you'll see I've added a pull quote here. So you're probably going, oh, how do you fix that? How do you fix the spacing down here? So it's a matter, typically once you start doing pull quotes, you're using them to actually adjust. You're using photographs and pull quotes to adjust your spacing here. So it doesn't really matter, because our space afters are not divisible by the leading, what happens is you'll see this line does not line up with this line, and that's okay. Sometimes that's going to happen. There are ways to work around it. So working with a baseline grid, you could do that. But for the most part, it's not. It actually is not the end of the world. So I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm just going to tab my. Oops. Sorry, just getting a little bit lost there. So typically, I'll paste this right into the text. When you're doing a carryover like that, I could actually paste this arrow right into the text as well, but I'm just going to leave it here for now. But you can sort of see when you do a continued over, what you're trying to do is give the viewer a bit of a break and then let them know. I mean, if the book is in their hand, they pretty much know that it's going to continue over, but it's a typical typesetting element that we tend to use. And again, we'll come over here. So now there's 2 lines up here, which is not the end of the world. Okay, so we're pretty good over here, but then we're 1 line over here. So again, I'm going to adjust this. And then, yeah, so we've flipped it so there's 2 lines up here now, so that's better. You can see that there's an issue down here, that there's 1 line. So when I have something like that, I am going to put a picture in here so I can adjust the overall column. So if I do this and pull it down, even that's not bad, because it doesn't matter if this doesn't go right to the bottom. I can adjust it a little bit more and see what happens. So that's 1 line there. So you can start seeing that it becomes problematic all the way around. So I can still paste this in at the bottom. That's okay. It doesn't have to be set here. So if I get to the next page, it's relatively okay. We're going to adjust this so that, see what happens until we get, yeah. So this is now 2 lines from the bottom and the story ends. So after that, I can go in and really figure out the typesetting. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is I've introduced the illustration just like you. I've reused it more than once. So I have this original one. The original one, the wolf is sort of holding the pill over the patient's head, much like the vulture was holding the pill over the patient's head. Then I've blown it up and used it here. So relatively speaking, you wouldn't really use that same illustration again without changing it. So just the reason being, by this point, the viewer is going to get tired of seeing the exact same image. But what you could do is create a set of icons using the same style, spot illustrations, that sort of thing. So as I get to here, this is where in the actual document they're talking about Trump and all of this thing. So what I've done is I found a stock image, so I'm going to put the stock image here, and then I'm going to do I'm going to do a red overlay, which is going to tie in with the rest of the actual look and feel. So this is just a stock image that I found in Getty of a researcher, which works pretty well, but it doesn't tell enough of a story that I need to make it a huge photograph. So right now it's sort of it's more of a context image. And then I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this picture of Trump, and I'm going to actually overlay that right onto that one. So, and then actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of this red box. I'm going to use this red box and butt it up to the corner. So I have adjusted the layout so that I have a bit of a red overlay with a bit of a picture sneaking through here. Just trying to make it a little bit less formal, a little bit more interesting. If I zoom in there, I have to put in the right caption. So I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about here. So I have to put in the proper caption for Trump. But typically, when you do something like this, where you have an actual photograph that pertains to the story, you have to make sure that it's captioned. So typically when you're doing a caption, again, that's going to be a different style in your style sheets, and it usually is a little bit smaller than your body copy. So typically 7 point. It needs to relate somehow visually to the actual picture that it is captioning. So I might go in and make it a little bit closer. Yeah, so it becomes a little bit of a photo collage, really. And then when I actually zoom out, so we've got our pull quotes in. Just to touch base, some of you might say, well, how come you have pull quotes in red here that are upper and lowercase, but then you also have these kind of pull quotes that are all uppercase? And really that's because I'm trying to treat the actual illustration with its own style. So that's why you sort of see this really oversized, very uncomfortable type. And that really becomes part of the illustration. So for consistency, I didn't want to do it here and not have it show up again. So on this spread here, I've done it here as well. So there you can sort of see the end of the story now gets to here. There's still, this is sort of a quick, about, I don't know, about an hour and a half or an hour layout. So there's plenty of things that that I don't love about it. But the one thing that you can get from it, so if I just zoom out a little bit, cover and front cover are distinct from the rest of it. We introduce this idea, a visual sort of metaphor of this wolf holding these drugs away from a patient, which is really a take on the original illustration. And then you're introducing a series of colors, so red, black, white, and a little bit of green. So as we go through, we start our pacing here so that it's kind of a big, bold statement on the inside front cover. Then we move into our major text. We have a pull quote. Primarily, we'd only ever try and have one pull quote per page. It just looks bad when you have more than that. And in fact, per spread. So you can do two on a spread, but the reality is when you stand back and sort of look at that, you see that the text is pretty clean. The pull quote sits by itself. This is another area of interest. This is an area of interest. So you just don't want to overload a document too much with it. Here, this is an area of interest. This is an area of interest. If I wanted to flip this around, absolutely I could. You can sort of see as you open up the spread, this is kind of the hero. And then we kind of do the same thing here. So absolutely, I could flip it over to this side. But typically in publications, when you're opening a publication, the right-hand side of the spread is sort of the thing that you view first. So yeah, so you sort of see. And then the other thing is the pacing, right? So we have illustration, then a bigger illustration followed by type. We introduce a photo here, and then just for consistency's sake, because it is such a short document, I've introduced a kind of we'll call this a spot illustration. This is not a full illustration. Again, I could, if I wanted to, I could replace this with a photograph, but I think because we are primarily working in illustration, it's nice to have that there. That being said, there is no hard, fast rule on how much information you have on there. So I literally could, do something like this, where I actually take the photo of Trump, I drop it in here. Maybe we don't have a pull quote here, or instead of it going top and top, I could even do something where it's more of um, an inset image, and then we'd fix the runaround here. So you absolutely, all you're trying to do is sort of balance out a spread that has a ton of type on it. So really, what you're after is some balance, and then really trying to balance things out so that it's not, it doesn't become too much, right? So again, make sure that our images don't go across the page. If you're probably saying, oh, could you never do that? You can do that, but remember, this is going to be folded. So this will be printed on one page. This will be printed on another page. So if you're going to run an image across a page, you just want to make sure that you have enough on there that you'll be able to see this on the other page. So if I only have like this much coming over, you're never going to see it. So I think that's it for now. I look forward to seeing what you guys do. I know that's a ton of information, and we'll go over some of it in class as well. And yeah, that is it for now. Thanks.